Hello and welcome to the Integrity Sports Podcast, powered each week by Harper's Tree and Stump Removal. If you have any tree trimming, tree removal, or stump removal needs, Harper's Tree and Stump Removal has you covered. In addition to tree work, they can also haul rock or sand. They can do driveway work and can do horizontal grinding as well. Give our friend Keith a call at 229 314 2048 or at 229 938 2412. Harper's Tree and Stump Removal is proud to be the premier sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast.
Welcome to the Integrity Sports Podcast, covering local sports in the Southwest Georgia area, creating content that is factual, positive, and informative, promoting efforts by athletes, coaches, and sports administrators. Now, here's your host, Tim Estes.
We are live. I'm your host, Tim Estes, and I'm at our studios in Americus, Georgia. I'm joined by our co-host, Scott Westbrook, who's in our satellite center over in Butler, Georgia. And if you're watching live tonight and would like to interact with us, please do that on the live chat. We'd be glad to interact with you on YouTube. You can also comment on our Facebook page. It's high school playoff time in Georgia. And Scott, two of our local teams, Southland Academy and Schley County, will be vying for a state championship during their playoff run. Unfortunately, Sumter County High School was eliminated from playoff contention last week, but Scott, Will Rogers has things moving in the right direction.
He does, and I think you and I both were genuinely surprised that they didn't make the playoffs. That was something that I was quite sure this time last week that we'd have three teams to talk about in the playoffs, but regardless, the season was a great success. Will Rogers has got to be well pleased. Sumter County Faithful has got to be well pleased with the season, and they're in great position to catapult next year. And we'll talk about their region they'll be in next year later on in the show.
Scott, we had hoped to have Drew Mohan on tonight from ITG Next and from GAHS Football, but he had other obligations tonight. I hope that we'll be able to get him on throughout the playoff run. He always does a good job. I think our audience really liked Drew's breakdown and how he does that from a statistical standpoint and uses data only to project the winners.
He's unapologetic too, because like you said, when there's no emotion tied into it, and he's looking at raw numbers. Now, of course, there's sometimes that he goes with his gut instinct when the numbers may be telling him one thing, but it's rare, and he usually is spot on. He'll concede sometimes and on a pick and say, well, this one could go either way, but the others, when he's crunching the numbers, he could be right, he could be wrong, but in his mind, he's right. He's not flip-flopping around a lot.
Another one of our sponsors is One Digital Solutions. They're a steward of business growth and personal development. Their insurance, financial, and HR platforms provide you with a personalized tech-enabled solution for a contemporary work-life experience. One Digital resolves real problems for your business and for your employees. They do that by fusing together customized solutions that address things like employee benefits, HR, and financial services. It really is everything all in one. It's One Digital. Contact Will Peterson. His number is 229-347-6289. Call Will today. One Digital is proud to be a sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast. Scott, going to start with the only team that's playing this coming week, and that'll be Southland Academy. Last week, Southland defeated Deerfield Windsor by a score of 20-14. That ran their record to 4-6 on the season. Their opponent this week, the Lakeview Academy Lions. They're out of the Gainesville, Georgia area. They are 5-5 coming in. Let me recap real quick what happened last week, Scott, before we talk about this week's game. They had their rivalry matchup with Deerfield Windsor. And anytime Deerfield and Southland get together, you never know what could happen. And it was a defensive struggle all the way through the first half. Nobody scored, and it was marked by a lot of penalties on both sides, as well as some pretty good defense. However, on the first drive of the second half, quarterback Bank Simmons found running back Trey Sellers on a long pass that got the ball all the way down to the Deerfield-Windsor 33. Simmons later in the drive on fourth down, they went for it, and he found sophomore Mac McMichael. And Scott, I'm just going to pause right here. Mac McMichael is a kid that folks knew about coming into the season. They knew his grandfather was an incredible coach. His dad was a good athlete at Southland back in the day, but you just didn't know what Mac McMichael could do. And this is the kid that when you look at the entire season, he's kind of made progression each week, and boy, he's going to be a star for the Raiders over there. They hit the PAT. Cooper Boren hit the PAT and made it 7-0. Jackson Avant, just a little later, would recover a muffed punt, and late in the third quarter, he would give the ball to Southland at the 20-yard line. Luke Terra would run the football down to the 5, and then he'd later punch it in, and Boren's PAT was again good, and Southland had a pretty commanding 14-0 lead. Late in the third quarter, Deerfield's Lance Seals found David Hutchins on a touchdown strike, and with Marbury's PAT, Deerfield kind of got back in it. It was 14-7. This is where it got interesting. Deerfield tried an onside kick. Southland's hands team did a good job to jump on the football right at midfield, and they would take over there with great field position. One play later, Trey Sellers took it 50 yards for a touchdown. They tried to go for 2, so a lot of gamesmanship going on here. Deerfield denied the 2-point conversion, so it was 20-7. And Deerfield would score a late touchdown when Seals would find Brantley Micklig. And if that name sounds familiar, Brantley Micklig is the son of Georgia Southwestern Associate Athletic Director Keith Micklig. He got a touchdown, but Southland Academy hung on for a 20-14 win. So anytime Southland can beat Deerfield, Scott, it's a good day.
It is, and there's not a whole lot of Mickligs in South Georgia, so it's a safe assumption if you meet one in Americus or Albany, he's going to be kin of Keith in most situations. We really, honestly, we thought it was going to be a more lopsided game, more lopsided victory for Southland, but that's how rivalry games are. That's why rivalry games are so hard to pick. That's why, a lot of the gamblers will tell you they stay away from rivalry games because they're much more unpredictable than your normal game. And this is what's happened this year with Deerfield and Southland. And a lot of times one team will win when they're not supposed to. And in this situation, one team kept it a lot closer. And it was late. It was some late scores, but Southland won, and I think Micklig's last touchdown. It was late in the game, so it made it probably look a little better than it actually was.
This week's opponent, Scott, is the Lakeview Academy Lions. People in this area probably don't know much about Lakeview. We don't get to see them a lot. They are typically a really good baseball school. They don't have a lot of history of success in football. They finished the season at 5-5, and as we've mentioned on this show many times, the GIAA uses the Maxwell ratings system, Max Preps rating system, to seed their teams into the playoffs. Southland finished the season as the number 7 rated team in Class AAA. Lakeview finished as the number 10 team. Here's how the GIAA playoffs work. They have 12 total teams in the classification. The top 10 make the playoffs. But in week 1, seeds 1 through 6 get a bye. So they have 4 teams that kind of play a play-in round, and that's what we'll have this week. The rankings went like this. John Millage was number 1. Valwood from right here in Southland's region, they were number 2. Frederica Academy from over at St. Simon's, they're number 3. Brookwood, also from Southland's region, down in Thomasville, they were number 5. Pinewood Christian was right in there, and then Terrell Academy was number 6. So 3 out of the top 6 from right here in Southland's region. St. Andrews is the number 9. Tift area was number 8. Lakeview was number 10. So that's the playoff. The playoff run this week will be number 8 Tift area hosting number 9 St. Andrews, and then number 7 Southland will host number 10 Lakeview Academy. And Scott, the Raiders have a good chance to get their 5th win of the season and hit the reset button. You've talked about that a little bit over the last few weeks. Once you get to this point of the season, if it hadn't been great, you get all new life and you hit that reset button.
It is. And you know, I'm sure a lot of the Southland fans already feel like they've already got 14 or 20 points on the scoreboard for not having to drive through Atlanta and go to Gainesville. That's a long haul from Gainesville to Americus. So, I believe some of those players, and I know that some of them coaches, especially the ones that are my age, will be getting off that bus a little stove up. So hopefully, traveling from Gainesville all the way to Americus is going to, bode well for Southland and kind of give them a leg up already going in the game and hosting it. I mean, it's not like, they're driving from Dawson or even Valdosta. They've got to trek through downtown, which is a chamber of hell if you ask me. But anyway, I think Southland, this is a game that they'll probably do better in this game than they did against Deerfield Windsor, simply because it's not a rivalry and it's a game they should win.
Absolutely. I know Coach Rod Murray's looking forward to hosting a playoff matchup, and Southland fans, you need to get out and support your team. They need a big Raider crowd on hand Friday night. Scott, here's something I found interesting. Lakeview, according to the rating system, played the weakest schedule in Class AAA. The weakest schedule in all 10 games. They still only ended up 5-5. Their wins came over Athens Christian, who was 0-10, Creekside Christian, that was 1-9, Lanier Christian, who were 3-7. Riverside Military, 0-10, and Loganville Christian, that was 3-7. So all 5 of their wins coming against teams that really struggled this year.
So we're saying they're not battle tested is kind of how we're saying, right?
I think so.
Well, then hopefully the Southland will just come right out and, get ready and pin their ears back and come out fired up and really, make this a easy victory and jump on them early is what we're hoping for.
We couldn't do this without our sponsors each week. One of those is All South Appraisals, your trusted partner in appraising rural properties in our area. They can handle all types of properties, whether it's agricultural, commercial, or residential. From vast farmlands to that charming country home that defines the heart and soul of our communities, All South Appraisals has a commitment to accuracy and a dedication to the unique nuances of rural properties, and that's what sets them apart. They blend modern technology with old-fashioned attention to detail to provide you with an appraisal that you can trust. So listen, whether you're a lender, an attorney, an accountant, a real estate agent or broker, or a property owner, give All South Appraisals a call at 478-837-3818. Again, that's 478-837-3818. All South Appraisals is proud to be a sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast. Okay, Scott, now we get to Sumter County. The Panthers went down to Jeff Davis in Hazelhurst, Georgia last week. Jeff Davis, kind of a surprising win. I think you and I both felt like Sumter County would take that one, but Jeff Davis was ready for him. 21-0. That made the Panthers 5-5, and it also left their region in a 3-way tie for 2 spots. Sumter County had beaten Worth earlier in the season. Worth had beaten Jeff Davis, and now Jeff Davis beat Sumter. So in order to break that tie, the region took those 3 teams and they said, who allowed the fewest points during region play? And that was Worth County. So Worth got the 3 spot. Then they took the 2 teams that were left, Sumter County and Jeff Davis, and said, what happened head to head? And unfortunately, Jeff Davis won that matchup and got the 4 spot, which eliminated Sumter County. Is it disappointing? Yeah, in the short term for those of us that really like what Will Rogers has done and what the Panthers are doing. Yes, it's disappointing. But we're certainly pulling for Coach Rogers and the Panthers to get in the playoffs in the future. Feel like that's going to happen. And Scott, when you look at this big picture, certainly he laid a foundation this year. They had gone 3 straight seasons at 1-9, and now 5-5. Anybody in this area that knows what's been going on at Sumter County football's got to be pleased with the direction that they've got it going.
Definitely, Will Rogers. I went to one of the practices and drove by and watched another, and I told you early in the season that I sensed a different attitude out there. I sensed there was some discipline being doled out, but to some of the players while I was even out there. From how they had done in school, it was carrying over to the football field, and Coach Rogers handled that just like they did back in our day. So I'm glad coaches still do that, and there's a little more of a reason to participate in extracurricular activities to where it does help in the classroom too. But Will Rogers is doing things like that people don't know about, and it's showing up on the field. It's showing up. The kids are buying into it. I saw one of the players. I won't mention his, but he was one of the seniors for Coach Rogers, and he really shared something on Instagram last night that was really encouraging. Had a picture of his jersey, and it was so good to see that young man was leaving Sumter County with a positive impression and positive memories of his time playing football there. If they'd gone another 1-9 season or 0-10 or whatever, I don't know that young man would have had the same feeling. But he I could tell everything he had wrote. He has a positive outlook for what's going to happen next season for him, and had a very rewarding season this year.
Absolutely. And Scott, when you look at the seniors, there's some guys that we call their name every week that they're losing. Quarterback Anthony Tyson has had a great year. Their running back, Ja'Cory Wise, certainly will be a first-team all-region selection, and we'll miss him. Middle linebacker Braylon Terry has really stood out all year. But you got a stable of young guys that are coming up that's going to be really good, and they got some pretty extensive playing time this year. We're always excited about a guy like A.J. Kearse, who may be the best total athlete in the school and just a sophomore. He was battling injuries early. Ishmael Jones is a guy that can play multiple positions, both on the offensive and defensive side. And there's a guy I want folks to keep their eye on. I've seen this kid grow up from the time he was 7 years old in our rec program as a quarterback, and he went all the way through at the quarterback position through the time he was 12. Did a tremendous job, then didn't play football for a couple of years, and now he's back, but he's a sophomore. His name is Jayshawn Bobbs. Jayshawn Bobbs, really, really good athlete. He shows a lot of promise. The underclassmen at Sumter County have the opportunity to really put this program back on the map.
Well, and what's been coming through in the rec department for years. I've had so many winning programs, and it's about time that those chickens came home to roost, so to speak, that when programs go through 1-9 seasons and things like that, it's tough to get your athletes to come out there and participate in football. I think with Kearse and some of the others names you've mentioned, those are the names we're going to mention next year, but there's going to be some others that may not have come out this year, but see a transition in the program and want to be a part of it. We've seen that at Schley County with when all of a sudden the teams start winning, the kids start showing up for the weight room and they start showing up for the practices. Who if the team was not in a winning mode, some of those young men may not be out there. Let's just be honest.
Yeah,
I think that Sumter County is going to experience a little bit of that next year and a lot more. I've heard several things this year. One of the things Coach Bobby Bowden used to say, he said, when you turn a program around, he said the first thing happens. And I think Coach Prime is the one that actually has been quoting this, but you first of all, you lose big. You lose, go out there and you lose a lot of games and you lose big. Then you start, you lose by very narrow margins. You start losing, and the games are within reach. and then you start winning with a narrow margin, and then you start winning big. And so I think that we've seen that this year. We've seen the transition of exactly that thing, that the losses were not just total boat races. They were, even some of the losses were games that were very winnable for Coach Rogers and Sumter County.
I want to say hello to Carrie Claiborne, who's listening in. Carrie, of course, up at Buford High School as their PA announcer, and also for the Gwinnett Stripers. I don't know if they'll still be called that. I saw where the Braves have sold their minor league teams to private entities. We'll see what happens there. But Carrie listens in every week, and we appreciate that. Here's an interesting fact about Carrie, Scott. Back in the probably late 90s or early 2000s, they used to broadcast Georgia Southwestern basketball games on the local channel. Carrie was the PA, and not the PA announcer, the play-by-play guy for them. So he's got some local roots here.
He does. So what we're saying, he cut his teeth in America. Is that what we're saying?
That's
In
right.
the broadcast world. I really wasn't prepared for them to announce that me and a couple other guys had bought the Stripers. But I guess since it's made public, I don't mind. Yeah, we plan on making a few changes. Carrie, of course, not being one of them. I just didn't really want everybody to know that I was one of the investors that had purchased that baseball team.
Before we leave our Sumter County segment, let's let everybody know their region. Here's the playoff schedule for their region. Number 1 is Cook High. Cook High is going to host Washington County in the first round of the AA playoffs. The number 2 seed will be Fitzgerald, and they'll play host to Putnam County out of Region 4. Worth County, the number 3 seed, they'll go on the road to Augusta and take on Laney. Very winnable game there for Worth County. The number 4 seed, Jeff Davis, they've got a little tougher road ahead of them. They've got to go on the road to the Brickyard down in Thompson, Georgia, and take on the number 1 ranked Thompson Bulldogs. What do you think about that?
A few minutes ago, you said that that you were talking about the Sumter County season, and that there was, a silver lining, or there were some wins that that may not have showed up on the scoreboard. Well, one of them is not having to play Thompson in the first round. Well, that right there may be a blessing in disguise, because I'm going to tell you, that's going to be a bloodbath. It is. I mean, Jeff Davis probably wishes, had they known they were going to get Thompson in the first round, probably might not have tried so hard last Friday night. Those first 3, I see Cook beating Washington, Fitzgerald taking Putnam to the woodshed, and I see Worth County, beating Laney out of Augusta. So I see 3 of the 4 teams moving on. I don't know what it is, and somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong on this, but I have just never seen a lot of good football come out of Augusta, Georgia.
Me either.
You said that they try, when you talk to somebody in Augusta, they try to loop Burke County in with them, and Lincoln County, and all that kind of stuff. No, you got to dance with the ones that brought you. And we're going to talk Augusta teams, and we're going to, we don't sit there and consider Marion County a Columbus team. So therefore they should not consider Lincoln County an Augusta team. But a lot of these schools in Augusta, there's some good basketball played there, but I don't see a whole lot of good football come out of that place.
Thompson will tell you real quick, they're not Augusta.
That's right. That's it. They try to loop that, and they try to pull Burke County and Waynesboro and Lincoln County and all that, but no, they don't want to have anything to do with them.
That's right. Today's show is also brought to you by Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance. They're located at 925 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Americus. Go by and see Marty, Mary Lynn, or any of their staff, and let them discuss your insurance needs. They can do the discount double check to make sure that you're receiving all of the savings that are available to you. You can reach out to Marty on Facebook or by calling him at 928-3686. Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance supports all of our local schools, and like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Scott, that gets us to Schley County. They defeated Greenville 63-32. And believe it or not, Scott, I've had some folks this week say, how did you allow 32 points to Greenville? We'll talk some about that. But with the win, Schley, for the first time in school history, finished the season 10-0. They're ranked number one. I think they've been number one since the first ranking came out, and they're number one in Class A Division II. They will have a bye week this week, and we'll talk about that too. Let me quickly, I'm not going to go through all the details of this because there was a lot of scoring. In fact, I've been up in Athens all week, Scott, at the GRPA State Convention, and several folks watched our Facebook Live last week, and they mentioned, "Wow, do y'all have an incredible team?" Well, we feel like we do, but sometimes you got to consider the opponent as well. Jay Kanazawa got things started very early. He hit Jalua Solomon for a 47-yard touchdown. All of the PATs that were kicked by Miguel Yanez Rueda were good. KB Aldridge had a 20-yard touchdown run. Solomon, just a few seconds after that, intercepted a pass, and he returned it 55 yards for a touchdown. Kendall Sims wanted to get in on the action, so Kanazawa tossed it to him for an 11-yard scoring strike. Jeremiah Rogers, it was good to see Jeremiah back. Jeremiah also got in there for a touchdown. Glad to see Jeremiah back from his injuries. Kanazawa and Solomon hooked up once again in the second quarter on a 33-yard scoring strike. And by this time, it was 42-0. Backup tailback Kyler Dupre, who's done a tremendous job all year long. He entered the game in the second quarter, and he found the end zone to extend the lead to 49-0. And then with 3 minutes left to go in the half, Sam Forehand scored from 6 yards out to make it 56-0 at the half. The clock would run continuously in the third and fourth quarters. Kudos to Coach Darren Alford and his staff who emptied the bench. And this is where we get into those 32 points, Scott. Darren let not just those backups that get playing time when we're blowing somebody out. He got everybody into the game on this one. Those guys, and you're playing a varsity squad in Greenville, who we know it. They've beaten Marion County. They beat Central of Talbotton. You know, they're not just awful. But when you've got guys that haven't had very much playing experience on the varsity level, playing Greenville's number one, sometimes that shows.
It does. And Greenville will always have athletes. They're like Manchester. They're always going to have athletes. But they only dressed out Friday night about 17 players. Yeah. So, you know, there's only 6 on the bench. And so when we put in our JV and 9th grade team, if we had a 9th grade team, that's who we put in really. Those Greenville players, they still, a lot of those juniors and seniors and grown men out there, and they're good athletes. So, yeah, they're going to put some points on the board. And you know, I know that Coach Rooks, he'll a lot of times whenever we do that against some teams, and the other team will keep their foot on the gas. And I'm torn there because I understand his point. And a lot of times I'm like, yeah, y'all need to take your foot off the gas. But when they only had like 16, 17 players out there, they had to leave their starters in there. And sometimes a little baptism by fire ain't necessarily a bad thing for our younger guys. And so you know, sometimes you get exposure by playing that, but you also get exposed sometimes to find out where your weakness is and what you need to work on as a player. Because it's best sometimes, because a lot of times at practice, some of the our older guys may take it easier on the younger guys or something like that. And when you play Greenville or Central Talbotton or something like that, and then you're going in there 50 points ahead, the people you're facing on the other line, they're still varsity players, and they're not in a real good mood either. I can tell you that right now. So they're eager to do. And in Greenville, when they were scoring late, you would think it was a 1 or 2 score game because they were celebrating out there. And, even though they knew the game was all, for all intents and purposes, was over, they were still giving 100%. And I think that our kids, our younger guys need to, know what to expect next season because they're going to be the ones that's carrying the load then. And, of course, last week was a monumental time for me in Greenville. I went on top of that press box for the last time ever. You and I both know that. With that, and Scott,
I don't think you're joking about that either.
I'm not. No. And my wife will tell you, I've got one of the worst bruises on the inside of my thigh that I got when I kind of flopped. And for our listeners who can't appreciate this, it's a 10-foot high ceiling there, and they've got a little ratchety little ladder, and it's a hole in top of the ceiling. And that ladder, as tall as I am, when I'm standing on the very top ladder, the top of that hole is right at my chest level. So, it ain't an easy last little push up there to get in there. And then when I flopped over in there, about midway through the third quarter, I went and looked at that hole and said, well, I've just reconciled. This is where I live now, because I ain't going to be able to get back down out of this thing unless they get some Huey helicopter to lower me down. But I said, Lord, if you get me down out of this, I will not get up here again. So I will not be on top of the press box in Greenville, Georgia anymore.
Scott, we did score one touchdown in the second half when backup quarterback Blake Weldon found Connor Ryan on a 22-yard touchdown strike. Final score 63-32. This week, since the region we're matched up against only has 3 teams, Schley County gets the bye, which is pretty good for the number 1 ranked team to get that bye. So we'll take that. We'll face the winner of Lincoln County and Wilkinson County in round 2 next Friday in Ellaville. The playoff teams from our region are number 2 Manchester. They'll play host to Mount Zion of Carroll, who's only 3-7. Number 3 Macon County will travel to Dalton to take on Christian Heritage. Christian Heritage is 5-5. Taylor County is probably the only team in our region that's got a really, really tough assignment. They've got to go up to Bowden, who's 8-2, and we know about Bowden.
Yeah. Oh, and Bowden's going to charge you $5 to park there too, which is a burr under my saddle. But and Taylor's got some key injuries. Let's just be honest; they've got some injuries that I wish they didn't have right now going into this game. I think Bowden is probably going to take them lightly, and I think with the if they were 100% healthy, I think they could surprise Bowden and keep the game close at least till halftime and see what happens after that. Bowden's going to have that big old light show and that carpet field and all that kind of stuff that they have up there. So I'm hoping that the folks from Taylor County, when they go up there, they contribute to that parking lot with their $5 and at least maybe catch Bowden sleeping and look into next week.
Here's some interesting stats. The Wildcat offense finished the regular season with 2,444 yards passing, 1,688 yards rushing. They average 44 points a game on offense and allow 13.5 points a game, which sounds like a lot. However, our starting defense, these are the guys that are going to play from start to finish if it's close. That starting defense has only allowed 9 touchdowns all year in 10 games. 6 of those were in game 3 against Bleckley County.
Which we had a key injury in that game. And I'm telling you, I believe, and I said it after that game, Bleckley County is going to be a Final Four team in their classification. It wouldn't surprise me if they ended up making the state championship, because they are just loaded with athletes, and the coaches are over there doing such a great job. So yeah, that was a slugfest. I'm as thankful as I can be that we had it and we got out of it more or less injury free. And that's going to be something that we can look back on as we get deeper into the playoffs. That hey, we beat Bleckley County. This team that we're facing right now is not better than Bleckley County. I can assure you that.
That's
whoever
right.
it is.
Scott, one of the things Bleckley County's got that you don't find much in the Class A divisions, whether that's Division I or Division II, they've got a kicker that's a real weapon.
They do. My computer's about to go off. Hold on one second. Let me unplug it. Let me plug it in. They do. That kicker keeps them in a lot of games, and I think he was the key. He was the key. Okay, let's see. There it is. Okay, it's just charging now. In that Dodge County game, wasn't he the one that helped them win in overtime with a kick? So
yeah,
so
long field goal in overtime.
I'm sorry, Tim, you broke up a little bit. Say it again.
I said he kicked the long kick in overtime against Dodge County that won that game, and he kicks a lot of his kickoffs in the end zone. Doesn't miss very many extra points at all. He's just a real weapon.
And we would have seen him in overtime too. Had I forgot who got that late sack that kind of pushed them out of a guaranteed field goal range, and they had to go for it on 4th down in the overtime. So I mean, you and I just thought that he was going to end up playing a bigger part in our game, but thankfully he did not.
Yeah. Scott, we got a few other games of interest in our area this week, and then a couple that I want to mention that aren't necessarily in our area, but they're really interesting first-round matchups. Let's start with Lee County. Lee County is 8-2 on the season. They're going to host Dunwoody. Dunwoody's also 8-2. So this is a 2 seed against a 3 seed, but both of them are 8-2. Lee is a 38-point favorite, according to Maxwell ratings.
The only place I can think of that has a less storied football history in the state, high school football history in the state of Georgia than Augusta is probably Dunwoody, Georgia. The school across town in North Springs, they'll tote a load every once in a while, but I have never known Dunwoody. Now, unless we get back to the 40s and 50s, maybe Dunwoody's had a decent football team, but I don't remember them really setting the woods on fire. I could be wrong, but I'm going to have to go with Lee County just on sheer history. Dunwoody may be playing above their heads. I don't know who their 8-2 record is against. Even with all the high school pages that I follow, high school football pages I follow, listen to podcasts, I don't hear anybody beating the Dunwoody drum out of the Atlanta area. But I hear them beating the Lee County drum pretty much all over. So I'm going to go with Lee County on that one.
All right, we're going to have to kind of hurry here, Scott. Crisp County at 6-4 takes on Hephzibah, who is 7-3. Crisp is a 16-point favorite.
Yeah, where's Hephzibah?
Somewhere around Augusta.
Exactly. So we'll go to the next one.
All right, Parkview at 7-3, and Colquitt County at 10-0. These are two blue bloods in Georgia high school football.
Parkview quarterback Jaden Jenkins was at St. Francis last year. One of the nicest young men you'll ever come across. He played an all-star game with Carson. He and Carson are big buddies. We toured Fordham University with Jaden and his dad. His dad is very involved in Jaden's life, but not overbearing. I can tell you that. He wants what's best for his son. Jaden is a great athlete. Parkview's got some good history. But Colquitt County is Colquitt County, and they are, they really probably should have the first 3 rounds should be biased for them probably, but I think Colquitt's going to take that one easily.
Here's another one, Scott. Houston County, which you and I are fairly familiar with, they're 8-2. They're going to take on North Atlanta, who comes in at 9-1.
And it's going to be played at North Atlanta. Houston County, ever since that Thomas County Central game, they haven't really set the woods on fire as much, and I hope Hill can turn it around in this game and get some momentum going in the rest of the playoffs. I'm going to go with Houston County. I hate that it's not being played over in Kathleen, but unfortunately they got to travel up to North Atlanta and play that game. But I'm going to go with Houston County and think Hill's going to earn his 4-star rating that night.
And it's time now for the Who You Got part of the show, Scott. We only have one local game this week. Southland Academy hosts the Lakeview Academy Lions out of Gainesville. Scott, who you got?
I'm going with Southland, obviously. I think that secretly a lot of those Lakeview folks hope there's a running clock in the second half so they can get their trip back to Gainesville. But maybe if not, they can string it out a little bit, and some of the folks from Gainesville spend the night in America and spend some money on some hotels and some meals before they head back.
Scott, we also wanted to take just a minute to talk about the newer region alignments that came out today. They came out on the internet today. Let me see if I can get a few of these up here. Let's start with, let's see, this is Class 1. Class 2A. This will be Sumter County's region in the AA classification. Carver of Columbus, Columbus High School, Hardaway, Jordan, Kendrick, Shaw, Spencer, and Sumter County. So here's the interesting thing. All of those are Columbus schools. Sumter County, the only one that's not. I guess every away game in every sport will be in Columbus. They better find them some good restaurants.
Well, not only that, that's when get some of that SPLOST money to build a monorail between here and Columbus. But I'm just going to tell whoever's driving the Sumter County football school buses, make sure you slow down going through Buena Vista, because they are subject to pull over a school bus, as we found out just a week or so ago, football players on the way there. But yeah, it's amazing that every school there is a Columbus area high school except Sumter County. So I mean, Carver is obviously king of that hill. The rest of them, Sumter should be well pleased with the draw.
I think so too. Let's click over now to Schley County's new region. This will be Region 6, Class A in the Division 2 classification. Central of Talbotton and Chattahoochee County, both of those are currently in our region. Furlough Charter, of course, they don't play football. Macon County and Marion County both are in our current region. Rainey McCullers, I think they do one-act play, and that's about it. Schley County, Taylor County, and then Webster County, who doesn't currently play football. So, Scott, if you look at that region in football, there's only 6 teams out of that region that play football. So, Schley is going to have 5 non-region games.
And you know, you and I were looking at it a little bit earlier, because there's a lot of teams that have dropped down. So I don't think it's going to be too difficult to find some non-region games. We looked at the one. Manchester is obviously not in our region, so I feel like we're going to probably try to keep that rivalry going for a little while. But yeah, there's Metter has dropped back down. There's maybe Crawford or Dooley, or there's just a lot more schools who we've got a history with that we might can schedule some non-region games with.
Scott, as I mentioned, I was with a lot of recreation professionals this week, and I would bet you close to 50 of those folks throughout this week came up and told me, hey, they like the podcast, they watch it. They don't always get a chance to watch it live, but they watch it on the replay. We want to encourage anybody that's watching this, share this with your friends. We're really trying to build our following. We had a little over 1,700 views this past week. So, Scott, another good week for the Integrity Sports Podcast. But please, if you're watching this, whether it's replay or live, make sure and share it with your friends. Let me have your final thoughts, Scott.
You need to tell those people that at the rec thing, they say, look, if you like my podcast, you need to see my OnlyFans account.
Yeah. My wife probably wouldn't allow me to have that.
I've got one. Folks pay me not to get on there.
That's right. We want to thank everybody for watching the Integrity Sports Podcast, and want to thank all of our sponsors: Harper's Tree and Stump Removal, Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance, One Digital Solutions, All South Appraisals. And it's always great when we get a chance to be at Roman Oven. We're hoping to be back there next week. Both Scott and I had conflicts tonight and couldn't be there. So if you showed up at Roman Oven tonight to watch us, we apologize for that. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, Twitter, or what's now called X, and several other social media and podcast platforms. Next week, we'll have a lot more to talk about, I think, with both Southland and Schley County, hopefully getting to play next week, and it's going to be a lot of fun. For Scott Westbrook, I'm Tim Estes. Thanks for watching. So long, everybody.